Welcome back to Amir Khan Project Management Academy. In previous video, we saw how to create a new project and how to define different type of calendars. In today's video, we'll be working on resources and roles. So the first thing we'll do is to add different type of roles. So for that, we will go to the enterprise menu and then click on roles. And if you have blank screen, so all you have to do is to change the display type. So you click here on display and then go to filter by and select all roles. So you'll be able to see all the roles. So roles basically are different job titles or any role which is being performed by any individual, like painter, electrician, computer software programmer, software engineer, graphic designer. So these are the different roles. So normally what happens that when you are in very early phase of your project, you have not hired different resources, so you don't know their names. So all you can do is define different roles which you will then later on hire. So we will see how to create a new role. So for that, simply you will have to click on the add button. So if you click here, so here we have a new role. So what we can do, we can simply give the role ID and the role name. So let's give the role name as software engineer. All right. And other than that, we can also allocate this role to any resource which we already have defined, but we will just leave it as it is. And the other thing we can do is we can define the unit and prices for this role. So for the software engineer, effective from 1st of January 2026, the standard rate for the software engineer, let's say it is $50 per hour. So all you have to do is to type 50 and press enter. So automatically the currency and the duration, like per hour or per day, will come. And if you are thinking that how come we have this dollar or per hour, so we can go to the system settings and we can change. So in the next video, we will discuss that as well. And additionally, we can assign different codes to this role as well. So what are the codes? So let's explore. So we can close this window and we can go back to enterprise, and instead of clicking on the roles, we can click on the role codes. All right. So what are the role codes? Role codes are basically different properties for any role. For example, if we talk about the software engineer, so the software engineers, they have different properties. For example, software engineers have education, they have location, gender, they have nationality. So different roles, different properties are there for different roles. So what we can do is, if you want to create a new code, so for the first thing we will have to do is to click on modify, which is next to this drop down window. So if we click here on modify, we can add a new code. So the code, for example, let's say is the education. All right, so that is the new code, and we can close this window. All right, so a new code has been added, which is the education, and now we will define the values for this code. So we have selected the education, and if we click here on the add button, so we can define the description. For example, master, or maybe high school. And let's add one more, diploma. And we can give any value for the code as well. So that is the code, and then we have the description. And similarly, if you want to define a new feature for the software engineer, so again we can click here on the modify next to the drop down window, and we can add one more feature, which is like the code. So again, software engineers, they have education, they have maybe location, that currently at which location they are. So we can add the location as one more parameter, close. And now we will select the location and we will define the value for the location. For example, the first location, we can specify any value. Let's say Lahore is one of the value. We can define London as another value, and one more, for example Riyadh, okay, and so on. Okay, now how to use it? When you are defining the new role, you can assign these values, and later on, for example, if in your organization you have 500-600 different employees, and so all you need to know just by one click that how many of those roles are in which city, are in Riyadh, in London, or in Lahore, how many of those roles are having master's degree. Okay, so you can easily find that out. But again, it's not going to have a huge impact in your project execution, but it becomes easier to manage your roles, and same goes for the resources as well if you have properly defined their codes. So if we close this window and if we go back to the roles, so we have defined a role here, the software engineer. So we can select the software engineer and we can assign a code that the software engineer that we have is having master's degree. Okay, we can select just one value from this category, from the education category, and currently that role is in London, and we can close. Same thing we can do for the other roles as well. So that is how we can define the role codes, and that is how we can add a new role. So that is one of the roles, the software engineer, and these are the two codes we have assigned to this particular role. So let's close this window and let's go to the important topic, that how to define new resources for our project. So for that we will go to enterprise and then we'll click on resources. All right, so currently we are not able to see any resource because here it says the current project's resources. So all we have to do is to change the filter. So we click here on display and we go to filter by and select all resources. So that's how we will be able to see all of the resources which we have added into the system. Now these are not the resources for a single project, but these are the resources which we have added into the database. So now if we want to add a new resource that later on we will be using for our project, all we have to do is to click here on the add button and a wizard will open, and the first thing we will have to do is to enter the resource ID and the resource name. So ID, we can put any ID, and resource name, we can put the name of the person. For example, if we put here the name of the person as David, and then we can go next. We can use the wizard, but what I prefer is we just need to enter the resource ID and the resource name and just click on finish. And the later information, the other information we can enter using these tabs. All right, so we have added a resource, David, and now if we come down, so we have different tabs and we can use these tabs to enter some more information about our resource. So the first tab which we have is the general tab, and here again we have the resource ID, resource name, employee ID, and so on. Is the resource active or not? So we can specify that as well. Then we have the codes. So like we saw the role codes, we can also define the resource codes as well, that we will see in a moment. Then if we go to the details tab, so here we can specify the resource type. So we have three different type of resources: labor, non-labor, and the material. So labor is the manpower or the human resource. Then we have the non-labor, which is any machinery, any equipment, and then we have the material, which are the consumables. So the first resource that we are going to add is labor. So David, a manpower or a human. So we will select here labor. Then under the profile section, we can specify that which calendar this particular resource will be following. So by default, we will go to any calendar that has already been selected. But if you want, you can create a separate calendar for David, That could be like 3 days a week or 5 days or 7 days a week, so that depends. But again, we have this option that for each and every resource we can have a separate calendar as well. Then we can go to the units and prices. So here we can specify that how much you are going to pay to this particular resource. So for example, it is 100, so we just type 100 and press enter. So automatically the currency and the time unit will come. So it is $100 per hour. Then if we go to the roles, so optionally you can assign a role to this person as well. So for example, if we click on the assign button, so we can select the role that we want to assign to David. So again, it depends. So we can double click on software engineer, for example. So this is what David is supposed to perform. That is the software engineer. We can assign multiple roles as well. So let's assign one more role. So for example, DBA, database analyst, and for example, the trainer as well. So these are the 3 roles that I have assigned to David. You can select any one of the role as the primary role. Now the role that you will select as the primary role will impact your budget, your overtime, your scheduling as well. So that we will see once we will go to the scheduling part, but only one of the role can be selected as the primary role. And you can also specify the proficiency level for each and every role as well. Then notes, you can just write any note if you want. So you click on modify, you can type anything about this resource. So that is again the option available. So again, in order to add a new resource, you click here on the add button, give the resource ID and resource name, and then you can go to these different tabs. So the first tab is the general tab, again the basic information here. Optionally you can assign the codes. Important thing here is the details tab, so make sure you select the resource, the proper resource type, and if you want you can assign a calendar to the resource as well. Units and prices, that is important, that will directly impact your budget, so you can specify the standard rate for this resource as well. Roles, again depends, if you want to assign the role you can, or you can just leave it blank as well. So let's add one more resource. So let's click here on the add button. So again it will ask for the resource ID and a resource name. So for example, this time we have a resource, let's say we are in a construction project and we need a crane. So resource name is crane, and just press finish. So here we have all these tabs. So the first tab, general tab, resource ID, resource name, you can change if you want. And then the important stuff is we go to the details tab, and the first thing you will do is you will change the resource type. So this time it is non-labor, so we'll make sure it is non-labor. And again, if required, you can assign any calendar to this resource as well. Units and prices, so for example you are paying $500 per hour for the crane, so you can change that. Okay. Now this one important thing is that the standard rate for any resource may change over time. So for example, effective 1st of January, the standard rate for the crane is $500 per hour. But let's say after some time the rate may change, so you can click here on the add button, and effective from today, for example 14th of Feb 2016, the rate will be, let's say, $750 per hour. Okay. So depending on the duration of your project, the system will automatically calculate the cost of the project depending on whether it is January, February, and it will check the standard rate from the system. So you can have multiple rates for a single resource as well. And no need to assign a role to the crane. So the important thing is the details tab and the units and prices. So these are the two more important things whenever you are creating any new resource. Let's add one more resource. So again, click on the add button. So again, resource ID and resource name. And for example, we need another resource. Let's say we need cement for our project. So again, we will specify the resource name, cement. Again, let's say we are in a construction project, and we will click on finish, and directly we will go to these tabs. General tab, nothing to change, like of course no employee ID, nothing, just the resource name. And again we will go to the details tab, and we'll make sure we'll select the right resource type. So this time it's going to be material as the resource type, and we will click yes. All right, and of course no need to worry about the calendar for the material. The important thing, two important things, one will be the unit and prices, but first we will look at the unit of measure. This is important. So for any material, we need to specify the unit of measure. For example, for cement, what's the unit of measure, whether it is per bag or per kilogram or per ton, so that depends. So we need to check or select the unit of measure. So we click here and we can specify or select the unit of measure. So let's say we want to go for per bag, but we don't see the unit of measure here in the list that we are looking for. So what we can do, we can close this small window and we can add that unit of measure in the system, and then again come back here and select. So how to do that? We can go to the admin, and then we can click here on admin categories. And in the admin categories, different very useful options available, but the one option that we want to use is the last one. This is the units of measure. So here we have all the available units of measure, and we want to create a new one. So we'll click here on the add button, and the new one that we want to create, for example, per bag. Okay, so let's just call it bag, and here in the unit name as well, let's call it per bag. Okay, it could be like per kilogram, that depends. And just close this window. And now if we come back here to the resource, so make sure we have selected the cement, and again if we come here to the unit of measure, we'll again click and we will select bag, double click. All right, so now if we go to the units and prices, so now we can see here that the price is automatically per bag instead of per hour or any other unit. It is coming as per bag. So if we give the price, for example 15, and just press enter, so it will automatically come as $15 per bag. So that is the reason we need to specify the unit. So that is how we can add 3 different type of resources. So we have added a labor, and we specified the price and any other information. So, and then we have the other resource, crane, which is the non-labor, and then we have the last resource, which is the cement, that is the material. So that is how you can add different type of resources. So before you start executing your project, it depends. Some companies, they already have these resources in the database. If not, there will be some allocated staff to add all of these resources one at a time into the system. You can also import it from the Excel sheet. So once the resources are already in the system, you can then utilize those resources into your project. So that is what we will see in the coming videos once we will go into the detailed planning phase. So once you have added different resources into the system, you have the option to customize these columns. If you want to see some more information about those resources, you can still go to these different tabs one at a time, but it is more convenient if you can see each and everything directly onto these tables. So if you want to change or customize these columns, all you have to do is to right click and go for columns and click on customize. So for example, we want to see the standard rate for each and every resource directly onto the main screen. So if you click on customize, you can go to the general and you can find the column that you want to add. So here we have the standard rate, and you click on the arrow, add it to the list, and you can also shift it up and down. So let's say I want it at the very last, so I can just shift it at the very end and click OK. So here we can see the column has been added. standard rate for each and every resource based on the currency that we already have specified.